I'm Layla.
And I'm Miranda.
And we're Quills.
And Caffeine.
Welcome back to our first real video.
Yes!
Not an intro.
Yeah, the awkward intro is done.
Woo!
Now we get to the cool shit.
So, we're actually on kind of a serious subject today. Starting off the channel, great.
Yay!
So, we're talking about, we were going to talk about our writing process, but we decided that it would be important to talk about, 2017 to, mid-2018, roughly?
Yeah, I feel like it was a little bit longer for me but we have approximated it as the wasted year.
It is the wasted year. Mostly because I don't even know how we ended up at the place where we were, but we sort of just ended up in two separate places and they weren't working for us, so we're going to talk a little bit about that.
For me personally, it was the wasted year because, so for context, from the moment I started writing, I have been a pantser. As far as, the terminology goes between pantser and plotter, where a plotter, you plot everything out very meticulously, everything that's going to happen before you start reading the book. Whereas pantsers flap out of the seat of their pants and they're just like, no, I'm doing what I want. It's just coming out of me as a type. And there's also plotters who are, in between. But for me, I've just never been a plotter. Ever. I just work so much better when I can just write whatever I want to write. And so I got into this place where I wanted so bad to be able to outline my book because I felt like it would be so much easier for me to know where I was going and then I could write it faster because I spent so much time just trying to write this freaking book. I've been working on this book for 10 years, approximately, at this point, and I'm finally getting somewhere with it, but I wanted so badly to be able to write it, and I was like, I'm gonna try this new thing, and I tried 10 different outlining methods, and none of them worked. Some of them got very close, but none of them were right, and I did discover things about my novel that were very useful during this time, but overall, I barely wrote anything during that time for, that whole year. I think for me it was probably a year and a half-ish. But, yeah. So that's why I call it my wasted year.
Yes. I call it the wasted year for me. I guess I should probably talk about my mom first before that. So my mom is one of my biggest inspirations, personally, because she is an author. She writes books. Her first one, yes. This is her first one. It's called An Unexpected Angel. So she wrote this one first, and since then she's been writing Christian romance books. They're pretty short. There's a good formula that you can use to write them, but they stay varied enough. She has very good characters and amazing plots. Her books never feel like they're getting old or that it's the same thing, because she always has very detailed characters, and so she's been writing stuff like that for, this one came out in 2012, so it's been a while that she's been writing these books, and so, so she was a big inspiration to me, but I thought, to me, I want to do the same thing, and I thought that I should also write Christian romance, because then she could help me with the marketing, because as an indie author, marketing is the hardest thing, because there are so many other indie authors out there, and they're all self-published, and they're all writing other stuff, and some of them do it faster, some of them do it better, some of them do it faster and better, so it's really about getting yourself out there first and having good content, which I thought, if I want to do that, I should write Christian romance too. But, so, my mom and I decided that we were going to write a Christmas series together, and I won't go too into detail about it, because I might still want to do it someday. But I spent forever trying to write this Christian romance, and it turns out Christian romance isn't my jam. I don't like writing it. I don't enjoy, the realism that it's grounded in. I felt like my characters were flat. I felt like they were boring. I felt like they'd been done a million times before. Even though we had just come up with this concept, I was already kind of bored with it almost. I wasn't, the concept was probably my favorite part of this series, but I still just wasn't motivated to write it at all. So I slogged through probably about 5,000 words of this novel, and they're all pretty short. They're around probably like 30 to 40,000 words. So I wrote a lot of it, and this was, I think, 2017, so last year. And we were saying we wanted to get it out by Christmas 2017, and so the due date was like October, and that due date got closer and closer and closer, and I said, I can't do this year, because I'm just like, it's not coming to me, and I'm trying to do school, and I'm trying to do a whole bunch of other stuff, so we pushed it to this year's Christmas. So I was supposed to be published this year, but like a few months ago, probably, Ren and I were writing together, and Ren was working on her novel, and she showed me a rough draft, and I read through it, and it was like just leagues beyond anything that I had even begun to write for this Christmas novel, just because, her heart was in it, and it was what she wanted to write, and it was like important to her, and she wasn't doing it just for like the marketing, basically. And Ren can testify, I just like broke down, because
It was rough. I felt so bad, because because we had talked about this, like, we talked about the Christmas story all the time, and you were always like, I don't feel inspired, I am having a really hard time writing it, but I need to finish it by this time, and I was always like, but Layla, you've got your Bonding Gods story.
Like my current novel series, I was like, I want to work on Bonding Gods more, but it's, just not the right time or whatever. Well, it turns out it was the right time. And I think I called my mom that night, and I was just like, this isn't working, Mom, just like bawling. And she was like, then don't write it. And like, I had built it up in my head as like this big thing, is like, oh, my mom's depending on me, and she wants me to write with her, and she wants me to, like, we want to do the series together, and that would be so cool if I could write along with my mom. And like, that would just be like the coolest thing. But then she was, she was fine with it. She wants me to write my own stuff, and she wants me to do it. And, now it's actually probably even going to be easier to market, because I'll have motivation to market it to the audience that I want to write to. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I spent a long time trying to force myself to write something I didn't want to write. So, word of advice to any of you aspiring authors: don't do that shit. Just write what you want to write.
I think that's important to think about too, is like, because we had talked about this as well, how if that had been your debut novel, you would have been known for Christian romance instead of,
fantasy,
LGBT fantasy
romance
specifically.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the opposite of the audience that you would have started building up.
The very opposite.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, that's important too.
A wise woman once told me, be who you want to be, girl. BARBIB.
Oh my god! A big part of it was accepting my process, because I think everyone has a writing process, and it does take experimentation to figure out what that is. I think that's part of why I spent so long trying to outline, is because I was like, well, I feel like maybe I have part of a process that's outlining, and maybe I just need to find out what that is, because I was having a really hard time pantsing as well at that point in time.
Yeah.
But it was because, actually, in reality, I had the wrong protagonist, I had the wrong main character. My main character changed
A lot.
Between the original iteration of this novel, which is completely different from what it is now.
Yeah. It's like a whole different series.
It is. It's a completely different plot, and the characters are different. I think there's only like one character that stayed the same consistently throughout this whole process. And she's not even the main character anymore. She was, but now she's not.
I know everything about Ren's book.
I don't know how she keeps it all together. I barely remember everything that you remember sometimes. But yeah, so it was just accepting my process and just forcing yourself to try to write in a way that doesn't work for you just is impossible. I'm sure some people can do it, but it is so difficult.
It's like a little soul crushing almost.
It is. It really is. Because you're like, why isn't this working for me? I've been able to write in the past quickly,
Right?
and I've, really loved writing, and right now it just feels like a slog, and it feels like I'm just miserable, and then and then you're finally like, hey, I've got to do the thing that I feel is best.
Yeah,
and
it almost makes you feel like you're a bad writer, but
Yeah.
you're not. You're just not writing right.
Yeah, you're not writing the way that you feel best.
You're not
writing.
in your groove, man.
You threw off your own groove.
You threw off your own groove.
Don't throw off his groove!
Another thing too, though, that's important though, is sometimes you do just have to slog
Mhm.
through it. But
Well-
if it's a whole process, as
Yeah.
opposed to one hard day, then maybe you take a look at what's going wrong.
Mhm.
All right. Is there anything else we want to talk about? I'm out of coffee.
That's very sad. I only have a tiny bit left. Anyway,
Moral of the story is express yourself.
Beat me up, Scotty.
I love that moral. That's great.
I thought. Oh wait, YouTuber stuff.
Oh yeah.
Subscribe to our channel.
Like for more content.
We're cool.
Okay, bye.
Bye. See you next Tuesday.
I feel like this is a very
We are
effective
Quills and Caffeine.
And now we have a theme song.